I'm Commissioner Dave Strohmeyer. I'm joined here by Commissioner Josh Slotnick. Commissioner Juanita Vero is joining virtually online today. Missoula County acknowledges that this event takes place in the Aboriginal territories of the Salish and Kalispel people. Cheryl, please educate us on any announcements we need to know before we get rolling today.
Hello, everyone. If you're joining us for this meeting virtually today, instructions for turning on closed captioning are on your screen. If you're joining us in person, we'll have closed captioning on all the screens here in the Sophie Louise room. There will be an opportunity to speak during the meeting virtually and in person. We ask that all speakers today speak slowly and clearly. This helps with the accuracy of the closed captioning. If you're on Microsoft Teams, if you would like to speak when discussion has been open for public comment, we ask that you use the raise hand feature. This is the small hand button. If you're calling in on the phone, you'll need to hit *5 to raise your hand. Once called upon, please hit *6 to unmute. If you have any questions, please find me during the meeting. We also have assisted listening devices if you need one. Thank you. Back to you.
Thank you, Cheryl. So here in just a little bit, we'll be opening 6 separate public hearings on various items. So if you have comment on any of those particular public hearing items, please reserve your comments for that time. But until then, this is the opportunity to offer public comment on any item that is not on the agenda.
Hi there, Travis Mateer, Missoula resident. I just wanted to talk about TED real quick. TED is kind of like TIF. It's a sort of tax increment type scheme mechanism that can be used for targeted economic development. And I think it's going to produce the same results that the city has been experiencing as in terms of not great results. I know usually it's like the state and the feds that are good scapegoats for why, housing is very expensive, but really TED I think is going to do the same thing as TIF. But acronyms are fun, so you should check out one acronym. It's from 1989, I think is the first popular usage of FUBAR. I'm not going to say what FUBAR means, but I think if TED and TIF continue getting used, I think FUBAR is kind of what property tax people are going to experience. They're going to be FUBAR'd a lot. So to avoid getting FUBAR'd, I think really take a look at TEDs and TIFs and all these fun little shell games that get played. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Travis. Any other public comment on items not?
Comment.
Yeah, Mr. Slotnick.
Yeah. So, as many of you may know, a little-known garage band called Pearl Jam is playing tonight at the stadium, and there's an interview with one of Missoula's favorite residents, bassist from Pearl Jam, Jeff Ament, in the Missoulian, and I just read it while I was eating lunch. And if anyone is in need of inspiration on how great this place is, our city, our county, our state, check that interview out, full of reasons to be proud of who we are and where we live. So there you go.
In the Missoulian. An inspiration.
In the Missoulian. Front page interview with Jeff, the bassist, who also was very much a part and in part responsible for the super great new skate park in Clinton.
Excellent. Thank you, Josh, for that. Any other public comment on items not on the agenda, either from folks in the Sophie Moise room here in the courthouse or online? Okay, seeing none. Claims received as of July 30th, 2024 through August 13th, 2024 by the Commissioner's Office total $4,824,071.80. We have 6 public hearings today. We're going to change up the order of the public hearings a little bit to accommodate some of our participants' schedules. We're going to begin with what is listed as number 8A on the agenda. This is a little bit of an oddity in that I am going to recess as the Board of County Commissioners and reconvene as the Planning and Zoning Commission that also includes the 3 county commissioners. And is it, Shane, is it just you today from the Planning and Zoning Commission or? Tyler. 3 of us. And the 3 of us. No, okay, so no Tyler today. So our Chief Public Works Officer is also one of our members of the Planning and Zoning Commission. As with all of these public hearings, we will begin with a staff report. That will be followed by any comments from the applicant or the applicant's representative. We'll open it up for public comment, close the public hearing, take questions or comments from the commission, and then we will take action. With this one, we, as the Planning and Zoning Commission, will make a recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners, which admittedly is a little odd because we were, for most of us, making a recommendation to ourselves, but nonetheless, this is prescribed by state law. And then we'll reconvene as the Board of County Commissioners and take up this item. If that was clear as mud and you did not follow, don't worry about it. Just kind of roll with it here and we'll get through this agenda. So we will begin with a staff report.
All right, good afternoon. I'm Matt Heimel, planner and floodplain administrator with Missoula County Planning Development and Sustainability. And I have a brief PowerPoint about this request for a zoning variance. If I can find the right window. Okay, so this is a request for a setback from the, or a request for a variance from the setback regulations found in Zoning District 8A. And the subject property is at 8523 North Placid Lake Road. And the applicants are Laura and Scott Bovard, and I'm sorry if I mispronounced their last names. And so this is the Planning and Zoning Commission hearing to be followed by Board of County Commissioners to hear the recommendation of the Planning and Zoning Commission. So here is a closer range aerial image of the subject property. This is the northern portion of Placid Lake, and the property is actually mostly adjacent to wetlands that also happen to fall below the high water mark of Placid Lake, which then makes it, by extension, part of the lake, subject to the high water mark setbacks, which I'll speak about in just a moment. Placid Lake, this is in the northeast portion of Missoula County. We're actually about approximately west of the Seeley Lake area. And if I need to pull up different maps, I can do so. So the request is a variance to allow placement of an elevated observation deck platform within the 50-foot shoreline setback. So the zoning district requires a setback of structures 50 feet from the high water mark. During staff review, no public comments were received. As I said, properties on the north end of Placid Lake with mostly thinned forest and wetland is also held in a conservation easement with Five Valleys Land Trust. And this is Citizen Zoning District 8A. Here is a picture of the site plan. It's an approximate site plan. The red circle shows the approximate location of that proposed observation platform, and the idea is to have that platform suspended in trees without permanent ground posts. And so that would explain why this location is suitable, also to then help promote scenic values of the wetland in line with the conservation values as held with this conservation easement. And then to the southwest or slightly lower, and then to the left-hand side, there's a proposed house location that is outside of the required setback. And the platform would be, on the site plan states about 25 feet from the water mark. Field measurement found at about 21 feet. However, that does show it's outside of the shoreline protection zone. So a few notes about Zoning District 8A. Zoning District 8 was created in the, I think, the late 1950s by a petition process. This is one of our citizen zoning districts, so it's not a county-initiated district. This was initiated by property owners up there who petitioned the county to create zoning that promotes primarily single-family dwellings, accessory structures as permitted uses. The observation deck would be considered an accessory structure to the proposed single-family home. And as I said, Five Valleys Land Trust holds a conservation easement on the property and has determined that the proposed deck doesn't violate that easement. So again, we have a 50-foot setback from the high watermark of Placid Lake. And here's a picture looking towards the lake or wetland area from a planner standing under the deck location.
That looks like the deck is
That is correct. The deck is partially constructed, and the applicant does contend that is one of the hardships, which I'll speak to in just a moment. But that is correct. It is partially built with the framing, but not completed. And then here's a view across Placid Lake to the general site area. And then looking across the property from the proposed house site, I do not believe that is a real deer, by the way. But that is a real dog in this photo. So in the application packet, the property owner does contend some proposed grounds for variance being that partially constructed and the difficulty in removing it. When staff analyzes hardship, we look at what would literal enforcement of the regulation result in for the property owner. And just a moment, I have a notification on my screen. So when staff analyzed this project, it was mostly found that literal enforcement of the regulations would then result in a proposed deck, which is supposed to be elevated on trees with low impact, then being placed somewhere further back, which does have permanent ground disturbance and scarring. So although the proposed deck would be within the setback, staff found that it is of minimal impact and has lesser impact than a deck on posts would then have if it were to comply with the setback. So with that in mind, staff is recommending approval, subject to one condition that essentially all other permits and approvals be granted. And I will note that the project does comply with the Missoula County shoreline regulations. So it does not conflict with the shoreline zone.
Okay, thanks. Scott or Laura, would you like to come up and say anything? Yeah, come on up to the microphone, and if you could just make sure the light is green at the base of the, and go ahead and state your name for the record and share with us anything you'd like to share.
Yeah, Scott Bovard. And I just wanted to make one point that, you're right, there are beams up in the trees. And it was kind of a mea culpa on that we purchased this treehouse package at a school auction in 2021. And that the purchase price included from the treehouse builder, he's actually a legitimate treehouse builder. It included a site visit, it included a set of plans, and then it included that he would do basically the beams that you're seeing. They're 4-inch by 12-inch beams. Let's just say this guy was less than communicative. I couldn't get a hold of him for probably 2 years. He would not return my texts. He would not return my phone calls. And I was getting really frustrated. Finally, he did communicate with me, did not give me any set of plans. So I had no plans to submit to the county for this. And actually, we got approval from Five Valleys Land Trust. They said, yes, you can do this. And I understand that the county regulations take precedence over Five Valleys. I understand that, but he finally gave me like 2 weekends that he could build the beams so that I could build the foundation on top of that. And I said, but Joel, we don't have a permit. And he said, it's just a formality. You don't need it. So another mea culpa. I was stupid and listened to him. And then I finally so I said, if that's the only time you can do it, and I've waited 2 years for this, put the beams up, then I will get the permit and I'll get the engineer, Tom Bodette did our actual structural engineering. He did the plans for us. We submitted it to the county. And that's when we found out that it was rejected, that there were zoning regulations that were against it. We're new to the Placid Lake community. We were not aware of these regulations. We're not trying to circumvent or flaunt any of the rules and the zoning regulations up there. But we kind of got backed into a situation where through our ignorance and kind of a desperation to get at least the beams up so that I could then build the platform up there, we went ahead and had the beams put up. So that's where we are right now. And I said in my letter to the county, I said it's been kind of financial and a logistical boondoggle for us and probably an annoyance for everybody here. but that's where we are. And so let's just say I kind of burned a bridge with this guy because of this whole thing. So for me to get these beams off of there, I don't know how much a beam like that weighs, but it's a lot more than I'm going to lift over my head. So it would be a challenge to get those beams down. Rules are rules, and that's fine. But I appreciate the fact that the county has given us at least a nod. So that I just wanted you to know we were not trying to circumvent or disrespect the county building regulations. Obviously, we would never do any house construction without a permit. So I just wanted to emphasize that we're not trying to circumvent anything, but that's the reason we ended up in this situation.
Thanks, Scott.
Okay.
Appreciate that.
Thank you.
This is a public hearing that I'll open. Is there any public comment, either in the room or online, regarding this proposed variance? Any public comment? Okay, we will close the public hearing. Matt, did you have a motion
Yes.
on the screen for us? For the Planning and Zoning Commission, that is?
So this is the recommended motion for the Planning and Zoning Commission as a recommendation to the commissioners.
Right. Joshua, Anita, any questions?
I don't
No,
have
my
any.
only. Nope, my only comment was, thanks, Scott. You answered all the questions I had in that monologue. So I appreciate that.
Shane, any questions? Okay. Let us make a motion.
I move to recommend approval of the request for a variance in zoning district 8A to allow an observation platform to be constructed within the 50-foot setback based on the findings of fact and conclusions of law in the staff report, subject to the recommended condition of approval.
Yes, Shane.
Second.
Okay, a second. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, let's go ahead and vote. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
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 I,
Okay. We will adjourn the Planning and Zoning Commission and take this up now as the Board of County Commissioners. This is that bit of funkiness that I mentioned earlier. So we will now see whether we take our own advice or not. Matt, do you have a variation on that motion to bring up?
Typing it right now.
I don't think we need to do another staff report. I don't think we need to, unless you want to, as the applicant, say anything more. We will open it up for public comment, though. Is there any public comment on this identical item that we just discussed, but now coming before the Board of County Commissioners? Any public comment, either in the room or online? Okay, seeing none, we will close the public hearing. No questions, I'm assuming, from the Board of County Commissioners. I would entertain a motion.
I move to approve the request for a variance in zoning district 8A to allow an observation platform to be constructed within the 50-foot setback based on the findings of facts, conclusions of law, the staff report, subject to the recommended conditions of approval.
That is in order. Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Thank you all. And thank you, Scott and Laura. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Shane Stack, for joining us. You can stick around if you want for. Okay, speechless. Okay.
Which item is that?
Okay, good enough. Thank you all. All right, we will go back to the regular scheduled list on the agenda here, and we will begin with a resolution to consider Grant Creek Crossing an infrastructure deficient area. And we'll begin with a staff report from Flana.
Hi, Commissioners. My name is Flana McClarty, and I am the Land and Economic Development Specialist for Missoula County. And today I have before you a resolution to declare the Grant Creek Crossing area infrastructure deficient. So this step is the first step in the creation of a targeted economic development district. It will enable Missoula County to support value-adding enterprises, which will in turn contribute to the overall economic well-being of the county. So this first step is to conduct a review of infrastructure deficiencies in the area and then adopt a resolution of necessity for an area within which a TED can be designated. The documentation of these conditions in accordance with state law provides the necessary foundation upon which a government may establish a TED to invest public resources in infrastructure to support value-adding economic development. On May 23rd, Missoula County entered into an agreement with Pioneer Technical Services to assist the county in the creation of a TED in the area known as Grant Creek Crossing. And they are here on the call and are going to present to you the infrastructure deficiencies.
All right, thank you. So if our guests from Pioneer are on the line and would like to introduce themselves and present, it is all yours.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. This is Brad Archibald from Pioneer Technical Services. My colleague, John Morgan, is also on the line with us to help me out if I need it at all. We have a very brief presentation about our work on the Statement of Infrastructure Deficiency for you. So Flana, if you could please advance the slide, I'd appreciate it. As Flana mentioned, there is relevant legislation regarding the establishment of a TED at MCA 715-4279. It allows the county and a local government to establish a targeted economic development district. A step in the process that is necessary is defined at 4280, and that is this step that we are at, acknowledging that there is an infrastructure deficient area that is limiting the ability to develop the area with value-adding projects. You could advance the slide, please, Flana. So you may have, we got a little feedback.
Try it again.
Looks like Flana got it muted. Thank you. We did present, gave you an introduction, you may recall, I think on June 26th about this particular area, and you saw this slide before, but here we are in our overall process. Assuming this resolution is adopted today, we would proceed with developing a comprehensive plan and then going through the proper reviews and approvals before actually establishing the TED itself. One more, Flana, please. So here is the area in question. Is the southwest corner of the intersection of Reserve Street and Interstate 90. It is currently developed to a very minor extent with the storage units, rental storage units there in the upper left corner of the parcel. The parcels that we consider as outlined in red. To the east are those commercial establishments, restaurants, and hotels that front along Reserve Street, and the mobile home park, Mountain View, I think it is called, or Westview, is on the west side there. Part of the site was part of a now defunct sand and gravel operation. The existing Knife River operation is to the north. Go ahead, Flana. As you can see on that photo, the area is clearly infrastructure deficient. Amongst the infrastructure deficiency findings was transportation. We simply don't have roads in the area that are proper for economic development of value-adding industries. On the right there, you can see a potential road network to give us better access to the site and access those properties that WGM Group put together. There's also a trail, a non-motorized trail through the area that may be considered as part of the development in the future. On the lower left there is the bridge at Michael Road that you can see is pretty tight, pretty confined. And if we're going to develop this area in a way that adds value-adding enterprises, we probably are going to need to make improvements to that bridge for one and possibly others. Those are just some examples of the infrastructure deficiency. Go ahead to the next one. Water as well. We do not have any water service in the area. We need water, for potable water, for industrial uses and for fire suppression. The City of Missoula Water Utilities last master plan, which I think was from 2018, did consider this expansion to this area as part of their plan, and they concluded they have capacity to do so, but it would require some improvements to their system within and outside of this area, with some capacity, with some more storage, some larger diameter mains and or booster pumps to make sure that we met mostly fire flow improvements or requirements, excuse me. Go ahead to the next one, please. Stormwater and drainage is also an infrastructure deficiency we identified. The soils are pretty coarse, as you can see in this photo. It drains very well, but nonetheless, the county has your general stormwater permit requirements, and development of this area will require certain stormwater and drainage infrastructure improvements, probably some regional or some retention or detention. Also, the DEQ has identified the adjacent Grand Creek as an impaired stream to some extent, and therefore has established some total maximum daily load limitations for Grand Creek. Those in turn will require the development or application of certain best management practices on the property if it were to be developed. Next slide, please. There are other infrastructure deficiencies on the site that are pretty clear. We have no wastewater or sewers on the site. And if we're going to develop the area with value-adding industries, we are definitely going to need to extend the wastewater collection system throughout the site. Other dry utilities, gas and electric, are going to need to be developed in the area. There's actually an existing overhead power line in place that will need to be that will probably need to be relocated to accommodate industrial or value-adding, development. Broadband looks like we do have pretty good broadband service to the vicinity, but obviously will need to be extended within the development itself. Life safety, this is within the Missoula Rural Fire District's coverage area. They will need to add staff probably or resources to make sure that we can provide life safety firefighting services in the area. It is possible that it may be more cost effective to have established an agreement with the City of Missoula Fire Department to cover this area. But in any event, we are going to have to make sure that we have that infrastructure. And as we face all over Missoula County and the City of Missoula, there is a shortage of workforce housing, which, as I believe you all know now, is considered infrastructure by the state legislation. And if we were to establish a TED and were to develop attainable workforce housing within this development, it could qualify for tax increment financing funding to some extent. Go ahead, Flanna. So our statement of infrastructure deficiencies document reaches the conclusion that based on the information presented in this statement, a finding can be made that the Grand Creek crossing area exhibits conditions that constitute impediments to the development of infrastructure-intensive, value-adding economic development in Missoula County. Go ahead to the nearly last slide here. If you have any questions, we would be glad to entertain them. And pending that, if there aren't any, then you folks can consider taking up the resolution that is necessary to consider this area infrastructure deficient. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, John. hang tough out there, and there might be some questions here shortly. Back to you, Flana. Anything else?
No, that's all I have.
Okay, let's open it up to public comment. Is there anyone in the room who would like to comment on this proposed resolution? Anyone in the room? Anyone online? Okay, any questions from the commission?
No real question, just a comment. And first, I appreciate Brad's firm's work doing a deeper dive and kind of confirming what even a layperson such as myself would think when standing next to this site. As someone who's lived here for a long time, there is nothing out there. It is indeed infrastructure deficient. I think he characterized it well.
Okay, Juanita, any questions from you? Are you still out there, Juanita? We may have lost a commissioner. That's okay. We'll carry on. We got two. No, I think as far as what we are taking up today, it's pretty clear that there is an infrastructure deficiency. So with that, we have a motion.
I move to adopt a resolution declaring an infrastructure deficient area exists within Missoula County, Montana in an area known as the Grant Creek Crossing, and that the investment in infrastructure in that area is necessary in the interest of public health, safety, or welfare of the residents of Missoula County.
I'll second that. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Flana, what are the next steps as it relates to this potential TED?
So the next steps include that we do currently have a Missoula County voice page for consideration of this TED. So anybody can go to that page to read more about it, to ask questions, post comments. After that, we will complete the comprehensive development plan and present that for recommendations to the Missoula Development Authority Board in September. And then the planning board will review it for conformance with the growth policy and zoning in October. And then we will have our first public hearing to adopt by ordinance the comprehensive development plan to create a TED October 10th. And then that will have a second hearing in November 7th. So, and all of this information is found on that voice page.
Okay, thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
Okay, we will move on to our next item, and this is consideration of final adoption of Deer Creek Growth Policy and Zoning. Lauren.
Cheryl, could you tell, is Commissioner Barrow on anymore? Okay, and that's all right. You might
I don't
have
see her on
that I'm
anymore.
concerned at the beginning of the Planning and Zoning Commission hearing because I didn't think we had a quorum of the Planning and Zoning Commission until it was noted that Juanita was on the line. But if she can't join us again, we still have a quorum of the Board of County Commissioners and we can proceed.
Good to proceed. All right. Lauren Ryan, planner with Planning, Development, and Sustainability. For your consideration this afternoon is the final resolution to adopt the growth policy amendment and zoning amendment to 2 tracts that are located off of Deer Creek Road. Great. So these parcels are just south of I-90, located off of Deer Creek Road near the Clark Fork River here. So the adoption would amend the growth policy and zoning designations for both tracts 2 and 3, this one that's highlighted here and this one that is adjacent to the river. On July 11, 2024, at the public hearing, County Commissioners adopted the resolution of intent. On July 18th and July 25th, a legal ad was ran in the Missoulian. We then had a 30-day comment period from that July 18th publishing date. The end of the 30-day comment period was on August 17th, 2024. We did not receive any new comments during that time. So for your consideration are two motions to amend both the growth policy designation and the zoning for these two properties.
Thank you. Is the applicant or applicant's representative here or online to make any comment?
I don't think I saw anyone online either. So,
Okay, is there any public comment on this? All right, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Any questions from the commission or a motion?
Can I do this all as one, or should this?
John, what do you recommend? Okay, let's do them both at once.
I would move to adopt the resolution to amend the Missoula County Land Use Map, Map 18, to assign the rural, residential, and agricultural land use designation to the properties legally described as Tract 2 and Tract 3 of Certificate of Survey 5850, based on the findings of fact and conclusions contained in the staff report. And I move to adopt the resolution to amend the zoning map to show the properties legally described as Tract 2 and Tract 3 of Certificate of Survey 5850 as agriculture, rural, residential 5, AGRR 5, based on the findings of fact and conclusions contained in the staff report.
All right, we'll second that. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you, Lauren.
Thanks, Lauren.
Okay. Our next public hearing pertains to the Granite Peak RV Park subdivision, and we will begin with a staff report from Tim Worley once he gets set up.
For the record, I'm Tim Worley, Senior Planner with Planning Development and Sustainability, and this is the Granite Peak RV Park subdivision expansion, which is a 50-space expansion. This proposal is by Dave Swisher of Lolo Peak LLC. Again, for a 50% expansion, it actually ends up being both a 50% expansion and a 50-space expansion in a total of 2 phases. And I should note that we're beyond the original deadline because one of the planning boards that we attempted to get this to was canceled because of lack of quorum. So we do need an extension granted by the applicant, which I think if we get a verbal on that, that will be sufficient today. This is a graphic showing the expansion to the west in 2 separate phases. Just zooming out a little bit, this property is located on Thoroughbred Lane, northwest of the Y, west of Highway 93, north of the interstate. This is the former Jellystone Park. The original approval dates back to 1994, and that approval actually was for 117 RV park spaces. I don't think that was fully realized initially, but again, this is a 50% expansion of what you see on the ground today. Just as a reminder, RV parks are subdivisions. They're considered subdivisions for lease or rent. They're basically in a similar category to mobile home parks per state law. This is a zoned location. It's zoned neighborhood residential, which does not actually permit RV parks because the RV park was installed when there was no zoning in this location. So the existing park is essentially legal non-conforming. The park expansion was facilitated by a special exception before the Board of Adjustment, which was approved in 2023. So this would be the totality of the RV park if the expansion goes through. You can see the existing portion of the RV park, and the expansion again is to the west and northwest. I like this graphic in what Ron has submitted from PCI because it really shows the expansion area, this treed area with the addition of a park in the northwest corner where the sewage lagoons currently are. So there's a series of both 26-foot wide two-way roads proposed, as well as 20-foot wide one-way roads in the expansion area. And there are variances required for this submittal because curb and gutter would be required for all the subdivision roads, which is not proposed with this application. Also, the 20-foot width on the one-way roads doesn't meet the 26-foot wide standard. Staff supports these variances. On the curb and gutter front, swales are currently used for existing drainage and are sufficient, and it would be a pretty difficult marrying of two different drainage systems to bring in curb and gutter. And with the road width, we can support the 20-foot width of the one-way roads because all roads will meet emergency vehicle egress standards. The single way into the RV park is Thoroughbred Lane, which connects with Highway 93. This requires a variance because two ways in and out are required in the wildland urban interface. We found that there was no reasonable second way out. Hypothetically, there is a two-track that runs through Malham Meadows to the north, but there's no real legal access for that. And again, it's merely kind of an informal two-track and wouldn't be sufficient for recreational vehicles. So we can support that variance. There also is a variance to permit a 3-foot wide perimeter trail. And I'll just put a bead on it here. It's this trail right here. This is part of the overall proposal. Because this is in the urban area and this is a standalone trail in lieu of sidewalks, what's required is an 8-foot facility that is a hard surface like asphalt. So there is a variance required for this. Staff's original recommendation, our current recommendation is for denial of this variance and a requirement to install an 8-foot wide trail within a 20-foot wide access easement. And the easement was recommended, even though this is within an RV park, it was recommended by Parks, Trails, and Open Lands in order to facilitate connections to other locations within the Y, potential connections in the future. Planning Board discussed different alternatives of trail that might go in this location. They felt that maybe the 8-foot width was a little bit too wide, so their variance motion was amended to support a 5-foot wide paved trail. This motion failed, but the board's message to both planning board or to staff and the developer was to work out some sort of compromise. So just so you have an idea, commissioners, of what we're talking about, this was the planning board recommended variance that would slim down the trail. It would widen it from the 3-foot width proposed by the applicant, but it would, it would basically facilitate a 5-foot width. But unfortunately for planning board, they did not pass the variance because they only got 3 affirmative votes. So PCI's alternative variance would recommend approval of the variance with condition language requiring a 3-foot wide hard packed gravel trail. And they would also recommend elimination of the 20-foot wide pedestrian easement. And they do recommend alternative variance findings, and I think Ron might have something to say about that as he does his presentation. Sewer is via an approved city sewer hookup that was validated by the city. Sewage lagoons in the northwest corner will be filled in eventually, and there will be connection to the local Y water system. And there is a condition requiring confirmation of water rights for additional water connections. And there's a memo to this effect attached to the staff report. So some issues about water at the Y. The water system serving Running W Ranch or Missoula Meadowlands serves multiple developments. The original water right was intended for the number of units at Running W or Missoula Meadowlands. So DEQ and Missoula Public Health actually had formal comment that's attached to the staff report. Additional connections and water rights to Y area subdivisions need to be verified. So this applicant will need to do that as part of this submittal should the subdivision be approved.
Yeah, Josh has a question.
What does that mean to water rights verified?
Well, basically the water right for Running W subdivision confirmed that there were X number of connections for that subdivision and that subdivision only. And a lot of those connections have been kind of spread out throughout the Y to developments, including this development. And as a result of that, there's going to have to be a reconfirmation of water rights.
Does that mean that there is enough water?
Right.
Thanks.
Yeah.
So we could make this happen and DEQ could say, oh, there's not enough water.
Yeah, my understanding is that Y water system is probably in pretty good shape for shares or some other system that would allow for basically the upgrade of the current water right. So there can be distribution to other subdivisions. That's my understanding, but that will have to be worked out with DNRC and DEQ.
But if we were to approve this, there's no guarantee. We're not making any guarantee
Right.
on what DEQ is going to do.
That's right. Yep. The RV park has existing parkland and related facilities a little bit further to the east here. Let's see if I can put a laser on it. The existing parkland will cover the required dedication of phase 1, but more parkland will need to be dedicated for phase 2 to meet state law requirements. So we have a recommended condition that county parks review the dedication with each phase. There is a requirement for buffering and screening adjacent to essentially the subdivision to the west, O'Keefe Ranch Estates. So there is a condition for appropriate screening to the west and to the northwest, and that's actually a zoning compliance permit requirement as well. So wildlife occasionally visit the area. Fish, Wildlife and Parks confirmed that there was one problem bear that had to be removed in the area. So we are recommending that this that a condition that bear-resistant garbage disposal methods be implemented. This is in the bear buffer zone, so that would have to happen by April 10, 2026. This will just kind of speed up that process. So public comment that we received, I'm just going to go over it in summary form. One person expressed concern over the single way out, considering the number and size of RVs that would have to exit the project in an emergency. There's also concern that the original approval was for seasonal use, apparently, and this might be full 365 days of the year, and that was a concern for one local resident. Let's see here. The neighboring development to the west, O'Keefe Ranch Estates, said that Granite Peak has been a great neighbor to O'Keefe Ranch Estates and has upgraded and continued to maintain their RV park, and they wish them best of luck as they move forward. We actually had a couple comments right before planning board, and that's these first two bullets. They're kind of verbatim comments. The plans should include mandatory planting and maintenance of trees. The connection to city sewer should be done as soon as possible and not delayed until phase 2. Tree planting and maintenance should be required with the development. This park maintains high standards. The most recent comment we received was a concern that if with adoption of the Y2 TED, that's an acknowledgement that there's an infrastructure deficiency at the Y. If that's the case, why are we adding an RV park to an infrastructure deficient location? These infrastructure deficiencies should be remedied before the subdivision is approved, and that this will be adding traffic to an already growing area. In summary, staff and planning board both recommend approval of this RV park expansion. And I have some motions for you whenever you're ready, commissioners.
Okay, thank you, Tim. Ron, would you like to share with us?
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for allowing me to speak to you. So I want to thank Tim for all his work on this. He and I collaborated hours, it seems like, on this. We've actually been working on this expansion for a couple of years. It's been very complicated.
This is Ron Ewart.
Yes, this is Ron Ewart with PCI.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Okay. So the Jellystone RV Park, you all remember that. So that was sold by Tom and Dale Malum to Dave Swisher. And Dave has made this a family business. And his big idea here is to improve this so much that it's probably one of the nicest RV parks you'll ever come across. He's done a lot of improvements to the place since he's had it several years now. Repaved all the roads, or most of the roads, built fences and all kinds of landscaping and different types of amenities. So that's what he's all about, is improving the area. Also, there was a comment about the sewer. Well, both phases 1 and 2 will go on sewer. Speaking of sewer, there's these huge sewage lagoons that are sitting out there, sandwiched between this property and O'Keefe Ranch. And I'm sure anyone that knows that they're there would like to see them gone. And Dave Swisher will take on the expense to get rid of that stuff, get rid of the muck and all the stuff, and then bring in fresh dirt and make a park there. And everything will go on to sewer. So in my opinion, that's a great improvement for the area as well. He'll have pull-through spaces that are paved, they're level, and they're longer than the existing ones. So sort of your Cadillac spaces. Maybe back in the day, the RVs were shorter, but anyway, it does bring in a lot of money to the economy, the local economy. People come here and they go all over Missoula County and nearby places. As soon as you pull in, the first thing you do is there's the office right there. And the first thing they do, okay, you do the paperwork and they give you the park policies. And the park policies are included in the in my submittal. And one of the things it states, or it says several things like, we have quiet hours and they will be abided by, or you will be gone. You have to only go no faster than 5 miles an hour. And Dave's son, Brody, is a full-time manager there, and he drives around in a golf cart. And if you're breaking any type of rule whatsoever, he puts an end to it. And people really like that. The people that are there, I mean, they like the atmosphere and the fact that it's just them and it's people that are law-abiding or rule-abiding. Now, this is called an RV resort. Now, I'll refer to it as an RV park, so will everybody. But it's called an RV resort because they have the amenities to back it up. Heated swimming pool, 19-hole mini golf course, fitness center, disc golf course, basketball court, pickleball court, fenced dog park, horseshoe pits, community picnic pavilion, children's playground, hiking trails, extra fast Wi-Fi, laundromat, guest lounge, restrooms, and convenience store and gift shop. So I think they earn it. Again, they're making more and more improvements, and to get rid of the sewage lagoons, I think, is huge. And I've actually thanked him many times, like, thank you for even doing this. Otherwise, they might still be sitting there grandfathered in use for who knows how long. The regulations, unfortunately, do not mesh with RV parks. We don't really have RV park standards, except, well, they have to be 30 feet apart although houses can be 15 feet apart from most zoning districts. And we have to follow the standards of 3.47, which requires curb and gutter, sidewalk, the whole works. None of that makes sense in an RV park. An RV park is a private campground with transit, folks coming and leaving. It's not like a subdivision, an urban subdivision like we think about them. But yet we have to follow those same rules or ask for a variance. So we did get the variance course for the curb and gutter, makes no sense, or the curb and gutter, not for sidewalk. Anyway, for the one-way street, we have one-ways at 20 feet wide, but there's nothing that allows for that. And the reason we have the one-ways is so that RVs can more safely just pull right through. They don't have to back up. So there's a lot of things that design elements that you want to put into an RV park, but they don't fit into the standards of 3.47. Same way with sidewalks. Now, there is an idea, okay, if you want to have an urban subdivision, you can have an 8-foot sidewalk on one side, which I don't think is a good idea. Why would you have a wide intermodal sidewalk on one side and the folks that live in an urban subdivision on this side, they don't get a sidewalk? And I don't know how often it's done, but graciously, Tim did give me that option. And I talked about it with Dave Swisher, and he basically said that's a non-starter. We can't, it would be like a racetrack around it. Also, to have the easement around it. I mean, when people come there and they pay, they don't want to be infiltrated by outsiders. Not that they would ever do that, but this is not for the public. It's for the folks that live there. So I think that to require an 8-foot wide, and it says right here in this findings, part of the reason is it enhances safety by inviting multimodal travel and reducing non-motorized travel conflicts. This is all great if you're on Karis Park walking along there, or you're in the Rattlesnake on that trail up Sawmill Gulch, or wherever. But here, you probably would rarely see somebody walking around it. And again, this is just an amenity. What we're proposing is a 3-foot trail, which is an amenity. It starts and you just, for exercise, you go around. It doesn't get you from point A to point B. Now, normally, we don't really buy the argument that, well, there's plenty of room for somebody to walk along the road. Well, in this case, there really is. Because, again, there's hardly any traffic moving around. Every time I've been out there, I've hardly ever seen an RV moving. And if they do move, they're going 5 miles an hour. So there's plenty of room for whatever mode you're traveling in, to move about on that pavement. So we don't need extra pavement going around it. We just want a nice little amenity. And that's what this is supposed to be. If there were a public easement around it, I don't know how they would get there in the first place. There's no public need for it. It's just not, it's probably not legal, and it's just not a good idea. So again, if I pass out this, I'll go ahead and sent this out a couple days ago to Tim, and I believe you sent it out to all of you as well. And I'm not going to go through it, but it's very succinct, to the point. So there's just the change to the motion and the change to condition number 6. And then I revised the findings to back that up. And then in purple, went through a little more detail on why it doesn't really, make sense to put this around it. And I guess the last thing about it is we're dealing with the expansion. We're not dealing with the old part. It's like I've done many subdivisions where they interconnect, but we don't go back to and say, well, on the old subdivision here that was done 25 years ago, we're going to make you put in curb and gutter over here. It's a totally separate thing. So I don't see how it can be required that a trail, much less an easement, can go all the way around it. So I think it would be better if we just let him do what he wants to do. He's going to hire a specialist to, to make this trail, and it's going to enhance the area. So remember, this is a campground. It's not a urban high-density development. And unfortunately, our regulations need to be updated to more closely fit RV parks. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ron. So is there any public comment on the proposed Granite Peak RV Park subdivision? Any public comment? Anyone online who would like to comment on this? Okay, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing and entertain some questions. Josh?
Sure. Hey, Ron.
Come on up, Ron. And is Juanita on the line? Okay, so who you see is what you get, so.
Thanks, Ron.
Sure.
So do folks come to this RV park, do they live there? Or are these people who are there for a weekend or something like that?
So I would say probably 95%, they come in here, they stay probably an average of 3 nights, and then they go on about their way.
Ron, so just in terms of projected users of the trail or path or whatever we're going to call that, that encircles the RV park, who do you anticipate using that?
Well, people that, they've been traveling for days in their RV, they finally get to this little oasis and they're enjoying all the different amenities. And this is one additional amenity that folks that are traveling in RVs can use. There's also trails throughout the property that they can also use.
So I guess in your estimation, is there, hypothetically, if this 20-foot easement was required, would there be any way in which this trail would ever be connected to anything outside of the RV park?
Well, I guess you could connect it to Thoroughbred Lane. They can walk on out. But the main trail that we've been talking about, and I've talked with Nick and Tim about this at length, is there's a trail that goes up the hill. Like if you look at any of the aerials, Tim, if you want to, you'll be able to see that there's a trail that goes up the hill. It's actually an old 2-track road, and it goes right to the property that's right next to the town pump, which is also owned by Town Pump. So we thought this would be a great idea to have a public trail along going up to the Town Pump property, but we'd have to contact Town Pump and talk about it, and then we'd have to go through that vacant property of theirs to get to the actual Town Pump. And I talked to Dave about that. He says, yeah, something like that makes sense. And he's all on board with that.
Oh, okay. Anything else you'd like to add, Ron? I've got some questions for staff,
Nope.
but okay, thank you. So I guess, thank you, gentlemen from the fire service. Shane or Tim, so we're talking a trail within a private development that is likely never to be used by members of the public except those who are paying to have their recreational vehicle at this site. I guess thoughts, I know we've had discussions about paved or concrete trails versus no trail versus compacted aggregate, but typically those discussions have been in the context of truly public access along roadways and such, which seems like a different category. So any response to that? Knowing what staff's original recommendation was.
I believe Nick from Parks, Trails and Open Lands felt that and I know we're not talking about the easement per se, but that the easement function to perhaps in the future connect this RV park to the wider Y area. Mostly folks, of course, coming to the RV park to recreate and then going out to either like the McDonald's or other areas like Muralt's at the Y. But I would agree that I think it's fairly internally contained. I guess the challenge, and Ron was right, that the regs aren't really well suited for RV parks, especially when it comes to things like non-motorized facilities. This is what's considered a standalone trail in lieu of sidewalks. And so because of that, and because it's in the urban area, it needs to meet this fairly hefty standard of an 8-foot hard surface walkway. And if you feel that the 3-foot hard packed gravel is appropriate, it's probably best to just approve that variance and go with Ron's alternative language for condition number 6. I don't know if Shane has any.
Shane, what do you think?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think our past discussions on sidewalks and shared use path, they revolved around publicly owned facilities that we are responsible to maintain. This is going to be privately owned, privately maintained, and I don't think we have a dog in the fight here. I think that's going to be up to them to own and operate and maintain.
And just one more question. So going back to the 20-foot easement point, that was being required simply in the event that there would perhaps at some point in the future be a connection between this internal trail and some other trail system such that folks could legally walk on this without being a paid guest here, so to speak.
Yeah, it's to keep it from being kind of perpetually isolated and maybe allowing further connections beyond this RV park in the future.
John Hart, any thoughts on the legal argument related to this, which I had not thought of previously?
Yeah, commissioners, I haven't thought about it previously either. I know that there have been other pedestrian easement requirements in subdivisions that our local district court has frowned on because there wasn't a showing that the public right-of-way requirement was directly or was sufficiently related to the impacts that the new development had on the surrounding area. And that's the analysis that the courts use. And I haven't tried to make that analysis. I don't think staff tried to make that analysis. And I certainly appreciate where parks, trails, and open lands would like to see something in place that provides future opportunities, but I can't say that it's legally appropriate here.
Yes, I resonate with that. Tim.
Yeah, just a quick finding that we did include in the staff report. It's from Missoula County Subdivision Regulations, Section 3.3.3.2, which requires connectivity potential to adjoining undeveloped lands, including pedestrian easements. So that was our justification.
Okay, thanks. Josh, did you have a question?
I think I'm ready for a motion.
Okay, could you bring up the motion language? And I guess we also have with us the variation that on that Ron has provided. Just for clarification, so, well, I guess I don't know what you're going to move. So, I'm just going to speculate here, not knowing what you're going to move, but if, for instance, Tim, we were to go with what Ron is proposing and approving the variance on the trail and not approving the I guess it would be the easement. What would that look like? Is that what we're?
That is exactly what I was hoping for.
Okay.
You could go with Ron's language for variance number 3, just go ahead and approve variance number 3. And then condition of approval number 6, I think Ron has the appropriate underline and strike through, which would require 3 feet of hard packed gravel. And then it also eliminates the easement.
So if on the screen, let's see, these are planning board's recommended motions. So on the screen here, where it's
I could probably fix it if I could.
Yeah, that would be way better.
Otherwise, I will say it.
I streamlined it a bit, but I think it works.
Okay, so is that inclusive of, was it condition number 6 that you mentioned? What covers the
Let's try
easement
this,
piece?
subject to
Ron, is what is on the screen there? Is that something we're in agreement of?
It should be. It's what I had sent in, or
That was our intent, at least.
okay.
And that would I can say on the record too that I think you're wanting to eliminate the easement, right? Okay, yeah. So we're going with Ron's amended condition.
Okay, thank you. All right. Oh, John Hart.
You know, this is really out of place, and I try never to do this. But I mean, I'm looking at the aerial of this property, and you know, I can see how O'Keefe Ranch Estates will all be developed between Waldo Road and I-90. And, you know, the people in those subdivisions and those to the west, they can all access that frontage road trail on Waldo Road there. But Ron was talking about this, and, you know, sort of the connectivity to the town pump and all that development, you know, at Meralt's in that area. And the O'Keefe Ranch Estates is somewhat landlocked without going out Waldo Road. And I'm talking about non-motorized access. They're landlocked from that development in terms of non-motorized access without going down Highway 93. And I don't know if, I mean, you know, I just wonder if it sounded like the applicant was interested in some connectivity between his development and that, and those businesses at the Y. And I wonder if it's worth asking if there's some opportunity now, you know, in lieu of granting all of these variances, if there would be some sort of access right that he would grant across that southern part of his property from O'Keefe Ranch Estates to these businesses at the Y. I just throw that out there.
Ron, would you like to come up? So this is not necessarily, I mean, this is looking into the future as far as east-west connectivity, recognizing that this is different than the circular trail system itself.
I just want to make sure I understand too. You're not talking about asking that trails be widened to accommodate future use, just to make sure that access exists.
Right.
Yeah, that now maybe we see if the developer's willing, we could make that part of the approval package today. And then, I mean, and I don't know. I know everything I know is what I heard today, but it doesn't sound like that land to the south is something that is going to be improved anytime soon. And it might be, there might be an opportunity for some non-motorized public right-of-way across that southern portion.
The reality is, if I understand right, given this is a privately owned, privately maintained, et cetera, they could just build a fence around the whole darn thing if they wanted to.
Right. So this would be a voluntary ask right now.
Yeah.
Ron?
So John, I'm glad you brought that up, and you have some very good thoughts on that. And like I said, I spoke with Dave about the possibility, and he was in favor of it. But we didn't have enough time to deal with town pump and all this. But what you could do would be to do like some type of conditional easement that if and when it does hook up, that it goes, through that piece, that corner piece, straight to the south, and then as you can see directly to the east, that's where the town pump and McDonald's is and everything there. So at such time as it would cut through that property, and there's an existing trail there anyway. I guess people already use it apparently. So, and the other condition probably would be that it would be, you can move it, like if he doesn't have any plans for the rest of that, but if he ever did, then if he needed to move the trail or something, he could do that. So conditional, and the fact that it could be moved at some point, and then maybe somebody or we or whoever has time can start talking to town pump.
Okay, we love keeping our staff on their toes. So, Tim, any thoughts on and I don't know if we'd want to specify width, 20-foot conditional easement. Well, it would be conditional in terms of the placement. I don't know. What we're wanting is connectivity, and it would be predicated on there actually being some future connection that it would, some connection it would hook up with. But yeah, location yet to be determined. We don't want to on the fly figure that out.
Although, Dave, I can see where it would be, where that existing trail is located, the one that kind of peels off to the left there. So maybe it could just be over top of that. And who knows, maybe if they ever do develop that piece, and they probably will someday, perhaps that might be out of the way, but they still might want to move it. When I'm talking about town pump, when town pump develops that piece, they might want to move the existing trail.
Tim, any thoughts? And I guess this would be a question for our deputy county attorney. Is there a way in which we could, in concept, approve such a thing without having the exact language nailed down at this moment?
Well, you'd want to have enough specificity
Right.
today. Now, I'm already regretting bringing this up. I just thought, well, now's the time, because if you don't do it now, then you may never have that opportunity. But it looks like, and I heard that there was interest from the owner to do something like this. But I'd probably defer to Tim. If Tim says it's impossible to do right now, then maybe
Well, you are
let it go.
stalling for time here, so Tim can actually write this stuff down. So, Tim, any initial ideas that provides enough specificity to in concept, keep this option open into the future, but not so prescriptive that it doesn't allow for options.
I guess one potential concern I have about it is that as staff in the future tries to recreate the intent here, if it becomes a thing in 10, 15, or 20 years, it might be kind of difficult to know what was intended. I mean, I can take a crack at it, and Ron, maybe I should speak, not to you, Ron, but to the commissioners as to whether there'd be a willingness to record something with the RV park. I assume that's what we're talking about.
Can I answer?
Yeah,
So,
go ahead, Ron.
and I just thought, yeah, it would be impossible to be specific, even if you said, oh, it's over top of the existing trail, because, so there's a good-sized common area in O'Keefe Ranch Estates that borders this property. And there's also an easement over it, but, so that would be a good spot for the folks from O'Keefe to walk through their common area and then get on the public pedestrian easement. But, and I think that part of that, like the, let's see, part of that trail may be part of the trails of the subdivision. I'm not exactly sure. So I do agree with keeping it, keeping the intent specific, but the location non-specific.
How would we word that, Tim?
Well, I'll take a crack at it.
Okay.
Let's see, the applicant shall record a movable conditional public pedestrian easement to facilitate future pedestrian connections beyond the RV park, subject to review and approval by Parks, Trails, and Open Lands and Planning, Development, and Sustainability.
John.
Movable or to be appropriately, to be determined appropriately at the time of final plat? Is that too vague?
Well, my understanding though is that it could have to move after the filing of the, and just so we're clear, this is a plan and not a plat. So there's an RV park plan, but there's no actual plat that's filed at Clerk and Recorder's office.
Okay. All
And
right.
it could be conceivably 10 years from now before the time is ripe to actually have this trail.
All right, well, let's go with what Tim Worley just proposed.
Read that again, Tim, and Ron, let us know what you think after Tim redoes it, reads.
The applicant shall record a movable conditional public pedestrian easement to facilitate future pedestrian connections beyond the RV park, subject to review and approval by Parks, Trails, and Open Lands and Planning, Development, and Sustainability.
Tim, did it say anything about subject to the neighboring property giving an easement or being okay with the public easement running right into their property? I mean, because I'm not sure if this pertains to the town pump or is it to that 20-acre vacant parcel to the west that Malum still owns? And should we reference this discussion about that piece of property? I don't know the legal of it, but the one that's immediately to the west of the town pump, should we reference that parcel? Because I think that's the one that we're talking about, although, you know, I don't know what's going to happen to that 20 acres. But I think what we're talking about now is trying to let folks be able to walk or ride their bike or whatever up to the town pump area.
Well, the only property we can deal with today, though, Ron, is your client's property.
Right.
Yeah. And right. You bring up a good point. This might be an easement to nowhere, but at least it's an option in the future.
There's no harm in that.
Tim,
Probably not.
Tim, is it in your language anything that indicates what the triggering event would be for actually activating this?
There isn't. I mean, Ron actually brought that up as a concept that there should be a trigger. So we should think about what the trigger is. Is it
An actual
an
proposed
actual
trail or
facility adjacent?
I think so. I mean, you wouldn't want to, it's only if there's a adjacent development that has a connecting trail that would activate.
Language sounds great. Adjacent development with a connecting trail.
Maybe that would be a separate sentence. The easement would be conditioned upon, I can't remember,
An
Josh, what you
adjacent
said.
development with a connecting trail? Or,
But just adjacent development, because the developer could choose to not have a connecting trail. So let's say adjacent development.
I think we could do that.
would that work? Ron, perhaps?
I think so. I'd have to read it out, and if we have to talk about it later, I guess we could. While I'm thinking about it, I'll verbally extend the ECC approval deadline till today, I guess.
Thank you.
Yeah. Not that he was worried about it.
Thanks for that, Grace. Okay, Tim, do you want to take another crack at reading this?
The applicant shall record a movable, conditional, public pedestrian easement to facilitate future pedestrian connections beyond the RV park, subject to review and approval by Parks, Trails, and Open Lands and Planning, Development, and Sustainability. The condition triggering the easement could include, I'm just throwing that in, could include an adjacent development. Does that sound appropriate?
Well, I guess, come on up, Ron, if you want. So you could have an adjacent development, and that development would have no requirement to have a non-motorized pedestrian facilities. So just the fact that there would be an adjacent development would not necessarily trigger building this trail within this parcel that then would not connect to anything. So it really wouldn't, the trigger would actually be a requirement or proposal to build a trail on either side of this parcel, I think. Unless we can say with certainty that simply a development, and I guess, what do we mean by development? A subdivision, or someone conceivably could build something without any requirement to construct a trail, I think.
Well, could we add to an adjacent development just the phrase that includes a non-motorized facility?
As a trail, yeah.
A non-motorized facility that would actually connect with this.
Mhm.
It sounds like what we'd be asking is if the adjacent development has a trail or a non-motorized facility, we'd be asking that they do connect.
Or you could just say when the adjacent property has a connecting legal access.
Oh, that's elegant.
Great.
That would be elegant.
Perfect.
And Tim, the only other thing I would change in that motion is instead of pedestrian, I would use the word non-motorized, because I mean, I would hope this is something that the neighbors could ride bikes on and things like that.
That's good.
And as far as Tim, could you read the first, we want you to read the whole line, but I have a question about just the first sentence. What does that say?
The applicant shall record a movable, conditional, public, non-motorized easement to facilitate future pedestrian connections.
So, yeah, stop right there. So what does recording amount to? just the statement, because we're not requesting,
No, it's actually recording an easement.
so recording the easement, but the easement would not be physically located anywhere we're not asking them to identify the specific location of that
Right.
easement. So is that implied in the language there, or?
I think so. If you look to
Okay.
old Montana power easements, they're non-specific as to location as well. And they'll say that the northwest corner of this section has an easement that permits a power line to go through it. So it's sort of that nature. We don't have a plat to work with, and that's why we have to record an easement. We can't just plop it on a plat. It has to be in a separate document.
Okay, that's what was tripping me up. If you wouldn't mind, Tim, let's take another run at reading the entire thing.
John, correct me on the adjacent property piece if needed, but the applicant shall record a movable, conditional, public, non-motorized easement to facilitate future pedestrian connections beyond the RV park, subject to review and approval by Parks, Trails, and Open Lands and Planning, Development, and Sustainability prior to final plan approval. And I added that part, the final plan approval, I think, this time around, when an adjacent property has legal access.
What do you think of that, Ron?
Well, or possibly you might, well, first of all, it would be pedestrian would be changed to non-motorized, probably your second pedestrian. And then, so there's two things that need to happen. I think maybe one, the property owner next door acquiesces to the public coming in, or number two, they donate an easement across. Like, let's say that triangular piece, let's say they build a hotel there or something, and then they're not really going to put an easement across it because it's public and people can just walk across it. So if you have the easement that just runs right into it, then they could say, okay, we acquiesce that the public can enter this property. Or if they don't, then they could just allow that easement through the property. So that would be one of the two scenarios. It would cover both of them. But I think how you had it written was fine as well. Because when you say when the neighboring property allows public access, I think that should cover it. Because they
It says
either allow
legal access, is that the way it, okay.
or something.
Okay, let us roll with that. And so that would be a new condition of approval, or what?
Yeah, we'll just insert it as a brand new condition, assuming that condition 6 says that the trail is 3 feet wide, hard packed gravel. We're going to eliminate the 20-foot easement as part of that condition, but this will be a brand new condition.
Sounds good, as long as I can read it accurately.
Okay, I think we have our motions in front of us right here.
Okay, I move to approve the request to vary from table 3.4.7 requiring 26-foot wide subdivision roads.
Second. Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye. I would move to approve the request to vary from section 3.4.7.3 requiring curb and gutter along subdivision roads.
I'll second that. Further discussion? Seeing none. All in favor? Aye.
I move to approve the request to vary from 3.4.9.4 subject to condition number 6 as amended to require a 3-foot hard packed gravel trail surface.
I will second that. Any further discussion on that? Seeing none. All in favor? Aye.
I move to recommend approval of the request to vary from section 3.4.6.3 requiring 2 points of egress in the wildland urban interface WUI.
I'll second that. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Here's the main motion. I move to recommend approval of Granite Peak RV Park subdivision based on the findings of fact and conclusions of law in the staff report and subject to the recommended conditions as amended.
I will second that. Any further discussion? Seeing.
My only discussion I want to offer is I commend the folks waiting for not falling asleep. I could see you wincing and trying and really appreciate your patience.
And thanks.
Patrick may actually have nodded off.
Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
remained there.
And thanks, Tim, for all of your work on the fly. Thank you, John and Shane, for your input. And thank you, Ron, for all of your good input. So let's go ahead and vote. All those in favor?
Aye. I do want to echo thanks, Ron, for being open to being flexible on the fly. And thanks, John, for paying attention so closely and thinking about the future. And thank you, Tim.
I think John was asleep, but he woke up.
I never saw
and,
him look
okay.
sleepy. And Tim, if you are headed out, can I give you this?
And let us take a 5-minute recess, and we'll come back here momentarily. We'll come back in session, and we will begin with the 9 Mile Acres minor subdivision. Patrick.
Good afternoon. My name is Patrick Swart. I'm a planner with the Office of Planning, Development, and Sustainability. I'll get my PowerPoint queued up here. All right, today we are looking at a request to do a minor subdivision known as 9 Mile Acres. And this request is from Gerald and Joanne Bender on their property at 22800 9 Mile Road, and they are being represented by PCI. Here's a look at the property location. It's directly off of 9 Mile Road here, just to the northeast of where the west and east forks of 9 Mile Road come together, and it's directly across the road from the Piney Meadows subdivision. The applicants are proposing to do a 3-lot minor subdivision on an existing 10.06 acre parcel. It's unzoned and part of the 2002 Regional Land Use Guide to the 1975 Comprehensive Plan, and has a land use designation of rural low-density residential. Access for the property is currently from 9 Mile Road, and they are proposing access off of 9 Mile Road as well for the new subdivided lots. There's no request for parkland dedication or non-motorized facilities, which would not be required for minor subdivisions, and no variances are requested. Here's just a quick look at the Montana Subdivision and Platting Act review criteria. So here's the preliminary plat that was submitted with the application. As you can see here, we've got 3 lots proposed. Lots 1 and 3 are 3.35 acres each, and lot 2 would be 3.36 acres. The northeastern, approximately 2/3 of the property, are proposed to be designated as no-build zones for steep slopes over 25%. And the remaining acreage on each lot would be reserved for residential development in the more level meadowlands towards the bottom. You can see the existing accesses off of 9 Mile Road here. Utilities currently run along 9 Mile Road. And it is currently developed with 1 well and an existing drain field. The growth policy goal number 8 directs us to proactively plan and provide for the logical growth of communities while protecting the rural character and sustaining county resources by guiding development to areas most suited for it, which is echoed in Objective 8.3, which directs us to guide new subdivisions and developments to areas that have the least impact on natural resources and are most suited for development. A little bit of a closer look at the land use designation. As you can see outlined in green here is this rural low density residential designation, which has a recommended density of 1 dwelling per 10 acres. This proposal wouldn't comply with that. It would result in a gross density of 1 dwelling per 3.35. And as you can kind of see in here, much of this area has been developed to a much greater density. That Piney Meadows subdivision that I mentioned before is a 28-lot subdivision with average lot size of 3 acres approximately. Some of the goals here are to, again, direct development to areas most suited for it. Residential uses are key. but to promote residential development in a way that protects agriculture, open lands, and resources, and protects areas that may be more sensitive, such as steep slopes, wildlife habitat, floodplain. And we are not making any recommendations based solely on the growth policy here. It was reviewed for impacts to agriculture and agricultural water user facilities. It was noted in the application that there is the occasional raising of farm animals on the property. During a staff site visit, we did observe in the 2 stock pens on the property that they are currently raising some goats. The soil analysis showed that the majority of soils here on the property are not considered well suited for agricultural purposes. That's with the exception of the small section labeled KR1 here. It's Krauss gravelly loam soils, which are considered farmland of local importance. But it's just a small sliver here along the right of way, as you can see. And development covenants do include language related to living adjacent to agricultural operations, notifying future lot owners of potential hazards and impacts associated with living near agriculture. There are existing water rights on the property. There was one filed for irrigation and one for stock water. We are proposing a condition of approval that would require the applicants to either reserve those water rights, divide them, or sever them from the property prior to final plat approval. It was also noted that on Deed Exhibit 3951, filed with the deed that created this property, it detailed an irrigation ditch and 20-foot irrigation ditch easement. During that same site visit, there was no evidence discovered of a ditch running through the property currently, but we are proposing a condition that the easement either be shown on the final plat or that evidence of its removal be submitted prior to approval of the final plat. As I mentioned before, they're proposing access directly off of 9 Mile Road, which is a 60-foot wide public road. Right now, it's improved to approximately 24 feet with gravel and does meet the rural subdivision road standards. We received a comment from Public Works noting that all accesses and approaches onto 9 Mile would require access and approach permits, which is included as a condition of approval to include that in the covenants. And we also have a condition requiring easements and use agreements be filed for any shared accesses. As you can see on the site layout here that was included with the application, they are showing a shared driveway between lots 2 and 3. As part of the application process, a fire hazard assessment was completed and approved by the county fire inspector. It returned a score of 32 below the moderate hazard assessment level. And this is in part because they made commitments on that assessment to use Class A fire-rated roofing materials, non-combustible deck and siding and railing materials, as well as committing to defensible space requirements and the installation of interior fire sprinklers in all new residential structures. It's part of the wildland urban interface intermix and has an integrated wildfire hazard level of high. In addition to these elements for non-combustible Class A fire-rated roofing materials, defensible space, and sprinklers being included in the covenants, we are also proposing a condition requiring notice on the plat to future landowners of these requirements. Also, as I mentioned before, areas of steep slope over 25% are proposed to be designated as no build zones. We did receive comments from Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks noting the abundant wildlife population in the 9 Mile Valley. And as a result, they're recommending the inclusion of their living with wildlife recommendations in the development covenants, which have been included, and are also proposing requirements for bear-resistant garbage cans, which we have included as a condition of approval as well. The Missoula Public Health did groundwater monitoring on the property along the developable area, in which they dug 6 test pits, 2 of which did show potential for high groundwater. They were located on lots 1 and 3 near the boundary of the no-build zone. And I believe the results were in the 8 to 9 foot range when they found some groundwater. But staff felt that there's sufficient area outside of those 2 test pits for development and opted for a condition requiring notice on the plat of potential hazards for high groundwater. as opposed to requiring studies associated, groundwater studies to be completed with building permits. And just a quick correction to the staff report here. That condition was submitted as conditions 7 and 8. It was supposed to be included as 1, just condition 7. It got broke out into 2. The applicants are proposing individual wells for the property. They do have a letter from DNRC stating they are exempt from water rights permitting requirements, and we're recommending a condition that they include the specific allocations of the 10 acre-foot per year approval in the development covenants. They are also proposing new individual septic systems for each lot. Missoula Public Health did submit a comment to us on June 21st stating that this is undergoing sanitation and subdivision review. We received a public comment that expressed some concerns about availability of groundwater in the area, so I did go a little bit more in depth into some of the groundwater here, and I'll just provide some of that information now. The Montana Bureau of Mines and Geology Groundwater Information Center has 55 entries for this particular PLSS section where this property is located, which shows an average depth to groundwater of 38 feet with an 88-foot average well depth and an average yield of approximately 38 gallons per minute. In the engineer's report submitted with the application, they pulled together 8 of those wells that they said are in close proximity and they believe are pulling from the same aquifer. And you can see those results here, an average flow rate of 49.625 gallons per minute with a well depth of 65.25 feet and an average depth to groundwater of 34.625 feet. Part of that public comment that we received specifically expressed concern that wells on the northeast side of the road are less productive than wells on the other side of the road. So we did pull some of the well logs for not only the Bender's property, but neighboring properties to the north and south. As you can see, the property to the north had a result of 50 gallons per minute on the well log, a flow rate of 22 gallons per minute on the property immediately to the south. And then this one here had a flow rate of 10 gallons per minute. I will note that on the well log for the Bender's property, which was drilled in 2002, they did not provide flow rate, and there is a comment on there stating that they did not find usable water, that no usable water was encountered is what it says. And then just a quick overview of a few other conditions that weren't covered. We would be requiring a 20-foot wide public utility easement for an overhead power line that currently serves the property. The application did state that they have intent to remove that and place underground lines when they come in for building permits. If that's not done prior to final plat approval, we'd require the easement to be included on the plat, as well as conditions requiring the inclusion of weed management plans and revegetation plans as appendices to the covenants. And this is the one public comment we received on this subdivision from Pat and Sharon Sweeney, who stated they couldn't make it today, but I will just give a quick overview of their comments. They recommended or are recommending denial of this proposal for reasons here that they believe that the density is inconsistent with surrounding development. I already touched on this groundwater condition. They also expressed concerns that residential development would have adverse impacts on wildlife and wildlife habitat, and they expressed some concerns with the existing covenants, stating that words like should be replaced with shall or must, and also expressed concern that the covenants could be changed after the subdivision is approved. And lastly, they would like to see protections for dark skies in the covenants. With that, we will be recommending approval today.
Okay, thank you. Would the applicant or applicant's representative like to present? Mr. Ewart.
The staff report is very thorough. I would just like to add one thing on number 5, where he says, where it talks about the irrigation easements depicted on deed 3951. Now, the problem is as Tim mentioned earlier, you get these old easements and it says, oh, it's in the southeast quarter, but you don't know where it is. So you go out and you try to find it, and maybe it's not even there. In this case, there is no ditch there. I mean, we could look for something, but if the information is not available, then there's really nothing we can do. And I know you guys love it when we come back and ask a condition or something. So I just don't know if that information is out there, because I've seen a lot of circumstances like this. We would be okay with the dark skies condition. I know that Patrick's working on something. I think it's a good idea. I think it's important to have down type lighting and not just going up in the sky, you know, keep it at elevation and motion lighting or whatever. Doing everything we can as far as wildlife, the fire, all that stuff. 0.34 acre lots would be same size as Piney Meadows. Those are all right around 3 acres or so. The Piney Meadows Fire Station is tucked back in there by the creek, and as is Piney Meadows Park, I think is the name of it. If you've never been there, you should go. It's very wild. There's not even a trail. Walk to the water if you want to try it. But anyway, as far as wells go, so there's a lot of different factors that go into wells. The depth, whether it's grouted, screened, the diameter, whether it's perforated, there's a lot of different factors that go into it. And on the north side of the road, you know, I have a well log right here that's.
Ron, I think Josh has a question.
So actually, I just wanted to clear this with John, really. If I understand it right, us approving this minor subdivision makes no guarantees about perk tests, groundwater levels, productivity of wells. It makes great sense as public comment, but I feel like we could go forward without this discussion. We're just talking about subdivision, and the person who's asking for the subdivision, by getting the subdivision, they're in no way being guaranteed by the BCC that they will have a productive well, or that their drain fields will be above groundwater, or that the perk test will be successful. They're just getting a subdivision.
Or do we have decision space based on what we might, what might be presented to us relative to groundwater that we could actually, that would play into our final decision in some way?
Well, it's true that by approving this subdivision, you're not guaranteeing a water right. You're not guaranteeing a certain quantity of water. You're not guaranteeing the ability to put in sanitation facilities because of high groundwater, any of those kinds of things. But you are required to consider the available information on those issues. And I think Patrick's done a nice job of gathering the information that's available from well logs adjacent to this property and showing what information is available. It's certainly not definitive, but he's gone through and done the due diligence that is required in order to make the decision.
Thank you. Go ahead, Ron. Ron, is your microphone on?
No.
Okay.
So going up the hill.
Did you start where you began like 15 minutes ago? No, we just go ahead.
You don't want me to do that, but so if the wells are down on the flat, then that's different than if they're up on the hillside. But all the water that comes from the top of that hill, you know, goes through this property and underground through seams or channels or whatever, permeable rock. It all moves to 9 Mile Creek. So there's really, I don't see how there's any difference between on the flat part here or right across the road. Because on the southwest corner side of the road, they've got plenty of groundwater there. So where's that groundwater coming from? Well, it's coming from, it's a watershed. It's not just an aquifer. So an aquifer can be seams or just permeable rock anywhere that water can move.
Okay.
In layers.
Thank you, Ron.
Yeah.
Anything else you'd like to add?
I don't really have anything else.
Okay, thank you. This is a public hearing. Would anyone, it doesn't look like we have too many people in the room other than staff left. Is there anyone online who would like to comment on this? Okay, I do have a question, Patrick. So as far as incorporation of dark skies into this, would that be an amendment to the, would that be a new condition of approval, or would that be an amendment of the, what's the term I'm looking for here?
Well, I did draft some proposed condition of approval language in anticipation of this question. So I'd be happy to pull that up if that's.
Yeah, please do.
That my understanding, and maybe correct me, John, is that if we include this in the presentation, would be included in the, that would be included in the motion if it's.
Yes.
Okay.
It would be as amended.
Let me just pull that up real quick.
What's that? Okay, so it would be a condition amending the covenants, or would we just basically amend the
So
covenants?
the proposed condition is that the covenants would be amended prior to final plat approval with the language included here. The draft language that I included is, I can just read it for the record.
Please do.
The covenant shall be amended to include a recommendation to future lot owners encouraging the use of low-impact lighting to minimize glare, light trespass, and sky glow. This recommendation shall be contained in a section of the development covenants that may not be amended or deleted without prior approval of the governing body.
Okay, thank you. Ron, is that okay?
Thank you. Yes, that's okay with me. In fact, I don't know if we should add the words down type at all. I don't know. I've just seen those words in conjunction with dark sky stuff, because we don't want somebody that just, they're spilling light.
Right.
But how?
Is this, yeah, I know exactly what you mean, because we adopted an ordinance for the city of Missoula back in the day that had like full cut off fixtures required. Is this language that we've used elsewhere in covenants, or?
This is an example. The low impact lighting to minimize glare, light trespass, and sky glow was associated with the Macaulay Meadows, which I believe was a court settlement and had some very specific circumstances.
What was the phrase or the word you were using there, Ron?
Well, I just said down type lighting, and I don't know that we need to actually nail this down. I mean, we have a general people's agreement that we would allow this. I mean, if it changes a couple words, I wouldn't have to come back, waste your time.
Okay, I think this captures the sentiment.
Essence, okay.
The essence of it. So, okay, thank you, Ron. All right, I guess we are ready to move forward.
Yeah.
Do we bring the motion back up?
All right, I would move to approve 9 Mile Acres minor subdivision based on the findings of fact in the staff report and subject to the recommended conditions of approval.
Does this motion reflect the amended?
One of the conditions of approval.
As amended.
As amended.
Okay, I will second that. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Okay, thank you, Ron. And I guess I would just say to get it on the record, it is, as far as the concerns about wildlife, it's not lost on me that this is an important area of wildlife connectivity and a wildlife corridor. What was proposed does not seem to be a significant impediment to wildlife movement. Certainly, the death by 1,000 cuts is a concern of mine in any of these subdivisions, but I think what we've just approved is in keeping with the adjoining development pattern. So thank you all for that. Next, we will move into our sixth and final public hearing today, and this is on the Elliott family transfer / boundary line relocation. Patrick, are you staffing this also?
Yes, this was originally taken on by Zach Jones, who no longer works for the county, so I'll be presenting this project for Zach today. It should be a little bit quicker than the last one. All right, so today we are looking at a request from Janet Elliott to utilize the family transfer and boundary line relocation exemptions on her properties at 16480, 16399, and 16228 Elliott Lane. And Janet is being represented by Eli and Associates. Here's a quick look at the two parcels involved. They are located just east of Highway 93 North as you're heading up Evero Hill. Just going to give a little bit of quick background on this project. Janet did come in with a request for a family transfer that was approved by the board on February 1st of 2024. Those proposed conditions are seen here. Janet does not intend to file this approved family transfer and instead is coming back with a request to do an amended family transfer that includes a boundary line relocation. So this would be in place of this approval. And here's a look at the existing conditions under the current request. The northern parcel here is tract 2 of Certificate of Survey 3399, which is 19.19 acres. And the other parcel involved is unzoned. It's known as the south half of the southwest quarter of Section 26, Township 15 North, Range 20 West. Both parcels are unzoned and fall within the 1998 Urban Comprehensive Plan, which has a recommended residential density of 1 per 40. And I will note that the proposed conditions being presented here are a correction from an error made in the staff report, which incorrectly identified tract 2B as the family transfer parcel to go to Janet's daughter, Denise. So this will serve to correct those mistakes here. So the proposal is to utilize the boundary line relocation exemption to shift the boundary from the south half of the southwest quarter here up to this boundary labeled relocated boundary, and then to use the family transfer exemption on this remaining parcel down here. Tract 2C would be gifted to Denise Elliott, Janet's daughter, and tract 2B, the remainder, Janet would intend to sell that property. She used to live on the property and currently resides in an assisted living home, and this would help cover the cost of the assisted living home, as stated in the application. So we reviewed this for the review criteria in Chapter 8 of the Missoula County Subdivision Regulations, and one of the review criteria is, does the recipient intend to reside on the family transfer parcel? And Denise does not intend to reside on tract 2C. That is intended to remain undeveloped. Denise currently resides in a home on tract 2A and would continue to do that. And again, this is a correction from one of the findings in the staff report. Will the proposed lots comply with growth policy density recommendations? The initial staff report, which I believe was pulled from the original family transfer approval, stated that it would not. But in the context of the family transfer and boundary line relocation, the resultant gross density would be 1 dwelling per 49.95 acres, which is compliant with the growth policy. And then the last review criteria that it did trigger was that there is an existing building code violation on the property for a 1,200 square foot shop. They applied for a permit that expired prior to them achieving the proper inspections. So that would continue to exist on the property should this be approved today. We did receive one agency comment from Missoula Public Health, just stating that tracks 2A and B would require an exemption or sanitation review, and that track 2C, being greater than 20 acres, is exempt from that review. And I believe the applicants should be online today.
Is the applicant online?
Yes.
We can barely hear you.
Okay, this is her daughter, Denise Elliott. My mom's right here. Say who you are.
Okay, thank you, and thank you for hanging with us for so long this afternoon. Go ahead, Patrick.
All right. If you wouldn't mind stating your name for the record, please.
All right, Janet Elliott.
All right. I just have a few questions for you. Did you buy the property with the intent of dividing it?
No.
Do you or the transferee intend to transfer the property within the next year?
No.
Have you talked to anyone at the county about going through subdivision review?
No.
Will the property be developed?
No.
And will the recipient of the property be residing on the property?
Yes.
And just to clarify, this is specifically in reference to track 2C.
Patrick, could you expand on that?
Yeah, so is Denise planning on residing on parcel 2C, which I'll pull up again, the proposed 85.7 acre tract seen here?
No.
Okay. Thank you. That's all the questions we had.
Okay. Thank you. Anything else that you'd like to say on this for the applicant? For Ms. Elliott?
No.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. I know we still have to do public comment, but staff is recommending approval on this.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone online who would like to comment on this proposed family transfer and boundary line relocation? Seeing none. Any questions or a motion?
I move to approve the request by Janet Elliott to utilize the family transfer and boundary line relocation exemptions to create and transfer one tract to their daughter Denise Elliott as presented in the exemption application and affidavit.
I will second that. Any further discussion on this? Seeing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Elliott. And that concludes all of our business for today, unless there's anything else anyone else wants to talk about. Seeing none, we will be adjourned.
Thanks, Patrick.
Thank you.